A number of decades ago, I was waking from my sleep due to an earthquake, and when I was looking around, I could only make out shades of darkness basically, but I could make out the room, but I couldn't make out any real detail. And I think people who've had sleeping paralysis will have told people about this themselves. And when I was looking around, I felt like there was an evil presence in the room, and I couldn't move, but I sort of snapped out of it very quickly for some reason. And I was able to get up and go to the door. It was pitch black, so I did what any normal fucker would do. I tried to turn on the light, and you think it would actually get brighter, but if anything, it actually got bloody darker. And it did it to every single room. Of course, every single room I had windows, so the logical next step would be to open the curtains of every single window. And that's exactly what I did. And to my horror, it was slightly lighter outside. Slightly. But it made no difference to the sight inside the house. And it made no difference really the light outside either. It was so dismal. So I was in a kind of scramble, looking around the house for anything that could be lit up. A computer screen, a light, anything whatsoever. But nothing worked. The watches, I couldn't see anything on them. The calculators, maybe that could shine some light. No, nothing. Even the LEDs on clocks and on video recorders, nothing was on. The only thing that was really seeming to look like it was on was the microwave, which was a little bit strange. There was a very tiny bit of light coming from the microwave, and it just looked like it was set at one time, which was either all the zeros or all the 11s. It was just very, very odd. About the brightest level of light was in the living room near the window. Basically the moon shine was creating all the light in the house. And I took a look outside through the window, and it was just as dismal as indoors. The moon itself was shining brightly, but everything else was in complete darkness. This is when I got a little bit spooked, because no lights were on, nothing was on, could hear no cars, no street lights were on, and no lights of the houses surrounding us was on. Nothing. Nothing at all. It was pitch black. All you could do is you could see the outline of objects close by in the street. So obviously you can see houses, but you can't actually make out any real detail. In our house there is a computer room, and this is where all the gadgets tend to be stored, like computers, laptops, phones, torches, and tools of the trade, so to speak. So surely something must be in that room. And while I was looking in there, the whole time I was just hoping I'd get some sort of light in the place, because I felt like I was being watched. There was something in the air, so to speak. There was something very close by, very near to me, that felt kind of evil. And at that point I heard a crinkling of paper, like a ruffling, and I looked into the next room, and there was a voice that said, "Get back into your body." A few moments passed, and then some very strange things happened. I looked around, I couldn't see anything, but I could feel something very evil and very real close by. And then out of the blue, I felt like I was pushed backwards. I went from one room, which was the computer room, back to my bedroom, and I thought I was going to land really hard on the bed, and then I just got up. It felt like I had just woken up. That's basically what happened. I looked around, the room was dark, and everything was back to normal. The weird thing was, that was a dream. But it couldn't have been a dream because I was walking around. I was looking around the room, I was seeing things that were happening, and then it felt like I was pushed back into my body, and then I just carried on as normal. Now, me as a person, I really can't understand exactly what happened there. Some people said what happened, that was an astral projection, but I don't believe in astral projection. Some people said it was an out-of-body experience, which is more or less the same thing. And some people connected to sleep and paralysis. The brain releases some type of chemicals, and you start to feel like you're floating out your body, and you're moving around the place and stuff like that. It didn't feel like I was floating. It felt like I was walking normally. It felt as if I was doing things in a normal way. Like you are now. You're watching this. You walk to the next room, you walk back, you turn the light on, you turn it off. It felt like that. It felt natural. But, according to my experience, I was asleep. I must have been asleep, because that's the only logical explanation other than I somehow entered another dimension where basically nothing was working. And some people have actually mentioned that to me in a previous video that I did, like, I think it was 5 years ago, where I explained this in a bit more detail. And they said there is a realm where it's where all the demons and all the lower leveled creatures dwell, basically. It's called the astral plane. And it reminds me of something too with the elevator game, except for the fact that this is something that somebody can actually experience. And if you try to play the elevator game at this point, we might actually get a few differences happening. So if anybody ever happens to astral project and realizes they're actually doing it at the time, because it's a very random thing. This has only happened once in my life. It's not something that happens every single day. I think to experience things like these weird events like I experienced, like the kind of out-of-body experience in which things feel very real and you feel like you are moving, is a rarity, and we sort of brush it off with our normal activities throughout the day. Throughout the years we start to forget things like this, but it's something that I have never actually forgot, and it's played on my mind for many years. After that, sleep and paralysis more or less stopped for me. That's another thing, it sort of stopped. It never occurred after that. So that's another very strange thing. But I believe that I could have been experiencing an out-of-body experience. I also think that things like these games that people play, these what can you call them, occult games, or playing with Ouija boards and stuff like that, I don't think it's on the same level. I think if you were doing this kind of game while you're in an astral projection form, if you do the elevator game for instance, the elevators wouldn't fucking work. But if they did, you would definitely find yourself in a lot of trouble very quickly, and in complete darkness, or at least in a state where only the moon is shining your way, or what they call red cross. So it kind of reminded me of that when people were talking about this elevator game, and I was looking at it and thinking about my experience with sleep and paralysis and this astral plane, and it's very similar, very similar. So whatever you do, don't go there, because it's dismal as fuck. And of course they said there's only a girl there, but with me it felt like it was a man, or at least some form of demon, and there was more than one. And I think something pushed me back. Something pulled me back into my body. It may have been my unconsciousness. I don't know. Likely. I mean, the scientific theory would actually say it was my unconsciousness that brought me back into my body. But whatever it was one of the strangest moments of my life. Very, very surreal. And I wish I had it again. I wish I experienced something like that again. But of course, I would actually want to come back into this reality because that one fucking sucks.